Hello there, welcome back to the channel, where today we're going back in time to the first hydrogen bomb test to get Godzilla off the nearby island. That's right, we're going back in time to the first hydrogen bomb test to get Godzilla off the nearby island. So yeah, this movie's plot revolves around going back in time to the, you know what, you get the idea. And full transparency, I'm a bit of a sucker for callbacks. I despise it, but nothing gets me more excited than the sound of jingling keys. Especially if it's a plot element that ties something back to the original. Destroyer and Kiryu both fall into that category due to their origins being intertwined with the first Godzilla movie. But before I can fully get into that train of thought, let's discuss the plot in a hopefully brief summary. Timestamps are included if you've played these games before. Enjoy! Since it went so well for my last video, let's once again go over our jolly old cast for this movie. And there are a lot of characters, so I'm only going to mention ones that are essential to the streamlined plot. Shindo is a World War II veteran who served in Lagos Island, and his garrison was saved by a dinosaur. It all makes sense, I swear. Terasawa is a science fiction author, Mazaki is a knowledgeable professor, and Miki returns from the last movie, with her psychic powers helping her to sense Godzilla. The Showa movies are not canon to the storyline, so King Ghidorah is not from space, and Godzilla fell unconscious under the sea at the end of the last movie due to Biolante's nuclear-eating bacteria. The movie begins in 22,004, as a flying ship finds Ghidorah's corpse, and its pilots mysteriously talk about reviving him. In 1992, flashing lights appear all over Japan, and the next day, Terasawa finds out about how a dinosaur saved Shindo when he was serving in the Second World War. The dinosaur helped repel the Americans while he and his soldiers fought on Lagos Island, making them the only garrison to survive. The flashing lights are confirmed to be a single UFO flying over Japan, before it hovers over Godzilla. When Terasawa mentions the dinosaur to Mazaki, he theorizes that if it was there in 1944, it would have been in the impact of the hydrogen bomb tests nearby, which occurred in 1954. Yep, the dinosaur was pre-mutated Godzilla, and he saved the person who rebuilt Japan's economy from the ground up. A UFO is found in a field, and its occupants reveal themselves. They are called Wilson, Glenchico, and Emmy. They reveal that they are time travelers known as the Futurians, and this is their mothership. They then have a meeting with the PM, informing him of the catastrophe that occurs in the future, as there is no longer a Japan. This is because Godzilla returns in the 21st century, and destroys Japan with his nuclear fallout, so the time travelers came back to save them by destroying him. They want to use the time machine to teleport Godzilla to a different location before he got irradiated, thus avoiding him turning into a kaiju. They want 3 people to help them, those being Terasawa, Mazaki, and Miki, for their knowledge on Godzilla's origin, dinosaurs, and psychic powers respectively. Emmy and an android called the M11 will also be joining them.
Yeah, あの本ね、ベストセラーになったから。
特に記録には残ってなかったわ。
そう。
Just before they leave, Terasawa inquires about some other creatures that will be joining them, called Dorats, and they are very adorable. Look at their cute little. Anyway, they travel back and fly over an American ship on their way to the island, and the crew notices.
That looked to me like it was from another planet.
Shower reported, sir.
What, that we're being invaded by little green men from outer space? Let's just keep it as our secret. You can tell your son about it when he's born. Major Spielberg.
Sir, yes, sir. I will, sir.
You know, I can't decide if this is absolutely dreadful, or if it's absolutely cinema. On the island, the M11 moves around at super speeds until it locates Shindo, and the garrison charges in the next morning. Suddenly, the dinosaur known as the Godzillasaurus walks past, acting as cover for the troops, but the ship takes notice and shoots at it. Weird to think that if this film was made even 2 years later, they probably would have made a Jurassic Park reference instead of E.T. Though probably not Back to the Future, as that film was allegedly the reason why Godzilla vs. Biollante flopped, leading them to add more fantasy elements and time travel in this film, allegedly. I got that one from Wikipedia, but if it is, that makes the Spielberg reference even more bizarre. Was it from a place of admiration? A place of desperation? Did they think that adding a reference to a popular director would get audiences in seats? Did a higher up ask the filmmakers to make it more Spielberg and the best they could come up with was including his relative? Was it a tongue-in-cheek reference to the cause behind the last film flopping, allegedly? Where were we? Ah yes, Land Before Time. The Godzillasaurus falls down.
Take that, you dinosaur.
And when the Americans go to the beach, it wakes up, attacking them before it goes back and disappears into the jungle. Shindo holds a memorial for the Godzillasaurus, and they teleport it to the middle of the Bering Sea, but not before they leave the Dorats behind. In the present, Godzilla has gone for good, but King Ghidorah has taken his place, as the hydrogen bomb merged and mutated the Dorats, creating Ghidorah. He starts to destroy Tokyo, and that night, Emi reveals the Futurians' true motives to Terasawa. You see, in the future, Japan is way too goated and becomes the most important nation on Earth, and so the Futurians are here to stop it. Shindo makes a plan to revive Godzilla using a nuclear submarine, but his employees are not so sure. Despite this, he decides to send the sub to the Godzillasaurus due to it saving him decades ago. The M11 uses its super speed to track Miki and takes her back to the mothership, but she manages to replace the red CDs in its head with green ones, thus meaning it now listens to her. So, way earlier, the movie mentioned that if you go back to a time that you already existed in, one version of you will disappear. That's what happened here, as a nuclear submarine sank in the 70s and mutated Godzilla. This kinda makes the Godzillasaurus feel like a Pokemon, as 1954 Goji, 1984 Goji, and 1991 Goji version 2 all mutated from the same species with different conditions, though I'm sure I could spin this into something about inevitable consequences that nuclear weapons bring, as it's portrayed as a canon event. King Ghidorah and Godzilla fight, with Goji grabbing his tail in a callback to destroy all monsters, and the others blow up the data on the mothership. When they confront the other Futurians, they laugh, as the new Godzilla is unfriendly and has no care for the nation, which is entirely understandable if the Showa movies were canon and the last two were not, because Heisei Godzilla is already a bit of a jerk. The Futurians activate the mothership's emergency protocol as Godzilla starts to foam at the mouth, using his new abilities on King Ghidorah, those being his nuclear pulse and super atomic breath. Cutting off one of Ghidorah's heads, Ghidorah falls into the sea as Godzilla destroys the mothership, before setting his sights on Japan. The crew come up with a plan to stop him, by bringing Ghidorah back in the 23rd century and using him to destroy Godzilla. That's right baby, it's time for the start of the movie again. I love it when time travel movies do that. Godzilla arrives in Tokyo, but Shindo stays behind, saying this.
まあいいじゃないか。好きにさせてくれ。どうせわしの人生はラゴス島で終わってるんだ。恐竜のおかげで生き延びた。わしが築いたこの国の繁栄を同じ恐竜がゴジラに姿を変えて壊しに来たかと思うと皮肉な話だ。
He and Godzilla share a final moment, as he contemplates the dinosaur he found on the island, while Godzilla seems to recognize him, before he destroys the building. A glowing ball of energy forms in the sky, as the newly made Mecha King Ghidorah appears in yet another callback. And he is indeed a mecha, being piloted by Emi and M11's code, and they proceed to fight. Mecha eventually manages to attach harpooners to Godzilla, before picking him up and flying away. Godzilla shoots his atomic breath, which causes them both to fall into the sea, and thankfully Emi survived, leaving for the future. However, deep on the ocean floor, Godzilla stirs again. So to jog your memory, they go back to the 40s and remove Godzilla from the island, and put the Dorats in its place. When they get home, Godzilla disappeared and King Ghidorah showed up due to the bomb test. But then, how do they know to go back? And why hasn't King Ghidorah shown up since his rebirth? Well, that's because they didn't just go back, they made a timeline parallel to the present. Here, the orange represents the present, and the yellow represents the past. Magenta represents the time travelers, and blue represents the impact they had. So they did not just go back to the yellow, they remade it. Then, when they remove Godzilla here, it simultaneously affects the timeline beneath it. Same with Ghidorah. We also now have a second timeline with the blue, lasting 50 odd years. Now there is no butterfly effect here, because this past does not loop to this present like in most movies. It's object based, or changes are only made about living things, but the main point is, there's not a drastic butterfly effect. Only Godzilla is affected, being displaced by the time travelers. If he was removed at the 15-minute mark, then from the outside it would appear as though he disappeared 15 minutes after they left. Only Godzilla disappears, the building he's destroyed aren't suddenly brought back. And Japan isn't immediately an apocalypse because King Ghidorah wasn't around for the last 50 years. The original movie still happened, and everyone is still aware of Godzilla existing, and so they have a motive to go back. And instead of it being an all-new timeline, both come together because they are directly linked. Pretty clever though, I doubt intentional. And I'm glad I was able to defend this movie from all the accusations that the time travel made no sense. So that's all good, right? Nice. On to my actual thoughts. Psych. Because there is one little detail that all this implies that ruins the entire plot. Please keep in mind I'm not enforcing my own rules onto this movie. I desperately wanted to solve it and this is the best explanation I could muster. I've given it more leeway than most and I still want it to work. But here's the thing. If going back in time creates a branch that moves forward simultaneously, then isn't this movie entirely on a branch? Let me explain again. So first is the yellow, the past, then there's the orange, the present, and then there is the red, the future. So at the start of this movie, the future group goes back to the present, with the intent of destroying Japan. This creates a branch, as we established earlier, and then both the future and present group goes to the past, creating a branch within a branch, this time being the past. So now all three are simultaneous and connected. We can visualize how this creates almost a second timeline again, like this. The blue is once again meant to represent the point at which the change is made, and we can see it goes all the way through, creating a horizontal line to show when the original line was affected. Let's go as far to say that the same rule applies to the space between this and this. Do you see where I'm going with this? If they create Ghidorah at this point, and nothing happens until this point, then nothing will happen until this point. And then when we look to the vertical line, you'll notice that nothing happened in the 50 odd years after his creation. So why would anything besides him appearing happen here? If he didn't destroy anything despite him apparently existing, then why would anything he destroy in this line affect this one? You might be thinking that this makes no sense, but here's where we tie the knot. Like we established, the timeline is closed off when they get back, but if they were to stay, they wouldn't run into a loop. They would run into an alternative present and eventual future where King Ghidorah existed since the 50s. But that doesn't mean the aftermath would appear here, because only the object is affected. And if Ghidorah was there for 40 to 50 odd years, probably destroying past Japan, why did present Japan not get instantly obliterated? Because of no butterfly effect. Because despite all of this destruction, it was only felt at this point. And if anything Ghidorah did during this blue part had no effect on the next timeline, why would anything he does in this blue line affect the one below it? Which means that all the villains would do is destroy future Godzilla and introduce Ghidorah into the future. So the actual logic of the movie is solid, but the villains are idiots. Instead of destroying Japan, it would have been better to destroy the future rulers of Japan before they rose to power. Because it's object based, it would give them the advantage over future Japan, instead of just introducing a dragon. But the most tragically hilarious part is that if the time travelers didn't appear in the 40s, only a version of it, because Godzilla originally got irradiated, then they also didn't appear in the 90s. So this entire movie is not canon to the actual Heisei series until several hundred years after Godzilla vs. Destroyer, and has no effect on Heisei Godzilla. You can sleep easy now, power scalers. Also, to avoid anyone correcting me, it's outright confirmed that the second Godzilla mutated in the 70s. So the thing I said about the buildings not coming back, and the aftermath not taking effect until later is still true, because otherwise one of the Godzillas would have disappeared in the 70s, thus meaning that 1984's Return of Godzilla, and by extension Godzilla vs. Biollante, no longer happened. And now after putting more thought into this than anyone else on the planet, it's time for my actual thoughts. For real this time I swear. So Godzilla looks mostly the same, with only some very minor tweaks being made from his Biollante suit, and those don't have a noticeable impact on his appearance. But King Ghidorah's design is just so much better. He already looked threatening enough, but now he straight up looks evil. His head is much sharper now, with his multiple horns and long jaw, and his body has been trimmed down a bit. The only complaint I really have is that his mane is no longer present. I really liked that part of the Showa design. Mecha King Ghidorah is also just so cool. I like how the robot head's lasers are different from his organic ones, and the metal chest plate, wings, and leg guards help break up his scaly body with some visual interest. They also did more advanced puppetry for both kaiju, with Ghidorah's heads feeling much more alive, and Godzilla's tail going all over the place. The Godzillasaurus is also really neat. It's nice seeing what he looked like before he got mutated, and I'm glad that he didn't go with a random T-Rex like in the original plan. The time travel, well, convoluted if you look too much into it, naming no names, is really interesting, and I also liked the fighter jet fight with King Ghidorah. It's a rather unique setting, and looks really good. Here's some other unorganized elements of this film that I thought were notable enough to mention. The laser beam looks way better. I really liked the lighting in Sapporo. The screen shake is really helping emphasize the scale. The final battle is rather dusty, unfortunately, and I like that Miki returned from the last movie. Anyway, at first glance, Shindo's death is not very good. He stays behind, and Godzilla kills him, despite Shindo helping Goji years ago. But this really adds a lot of depth to both characters. Shindo feels indebted to Godzilla for saving him, and so sends the submarine to rejuvenate him. He lets his past cloud Japan's future, so when Godzilla returns without a supposed affinity for the nation, he feels responsible. From his point of view, he's basically thrown the country out of the frying pan and into the fire, and instead of running away from it, he accepts the consequences head on. But Godzilla recognizes him and stops his rampage. This basically confirms that Godzilla is aware of what he is doing when he destroys stuff, despite his indiscriminate nature. He understands what Shindo staying behind means, but it's almost like he does a double take, before Shindo nods, reassuring Goji that he is here intentionally. It's rather poetic, because Shindo basically built the economy again after the Second World War, which he only survived because of Godzilla, who at that point was now destroying said economy. Godzilla's hesitation really stands out. The way he's waiting for Shindo to confirm what he already knows, it just adds a lot to the character. Speaking of his character, it's been rather consistent, with Godzilla remaining an antagonistic, yet not entirely villainous force throughout the Heisei era. This is much more apparent in the next film, but he doesn't seem to be destroying things out of pain or cruelty. It's just his nature. I don't really know a good way to end this on, so let's just leave it there. Thanks so much for the recent support on my Biollante review. Hopefully some of you have stuck around after that. But my next video is not going to be a review of Godzilla vs Mothra. I've been wanting to make a video about the next MonsterVerse movie for a while, after my last one aged like milk. And that idea eventually snowballed into an analysis on why general audiences prefer Kong over Godzilla. My Mothra review will be coming out after that though. Don't worry, there's no way I'm abandoning this project. I'll just be sprinkling in some other videos from time to time, which should make my overall output have some more variety. But anyways, have a wonderful day, and I'll see you all later.